Welcome aboard Pink Monorail. I'm your pilot, Shelly Valladolid, and next to me is my co-pilot, Noe Valladolid.
Hey.
Last time on Manufacturing the Magic, we talked about early World's Fairs, exhibitions, and expositions. We learned that Jules Burns was affected by the wonders of electricity and the first themed buildings in an ancestor of Epcot's World Showcase. Today we're going to take you to Paris to the exposition to end all expositions. So far. Looks like we're heading back to Paris for the Exposition Universelle de Paris 1889.
Wonderful.
There were 32 million visitors, there were 61,722 exhibitors, and about 25,000 were from France. This is where the Eiffel Tower comes from. This was France's big comeback after losing the Franco-Prussian War. It was also the 100th anniversary of the storming of the Bastille, which started the French Revolution. Therefore, many countries that had monarchs boycotted.
I can imagine. They wouldn't want anything to do with that.
Exactly. They didn't want to celebrate overthrowing the monarchy. It was 40 centimes to get in, and some attractions had separate admissions, like we had seen in Philadelphia, where you had to pay the 50 cents to go to the Statue of Liberty's hand.
Oh, very nice.
So these had separately ticketed attractions from the main entrance ticket. It was 5 francs to climb the Eiffel Tower, which was really expensive back then.
They didn't have elevators. You had to climb the stairs.
At first, they only had stairs. It was 300 steps to the first floor, 300 steps to the second floor, 300 steps to the third floor.
Oh my gosh.
So you really got your exercise in. After a few weeks, they did put in Otis elevators, and these elevators are really interesting in that they're like at Tower of Terror and Mission
They would
Breakout.
go up and down really quickly?
The engine was on the bottom. The machinery was on the bottom floor, not the top.
Okay.
And it would push them up.
Oh, okay.
Just like they do with Tower of Terror.
That's what launches them.
You know, the machinery's on the bottom.
Right.
And it pushes the elevator up and down. That's how you can make the penny float, is you're actually falling faster than falling speed.
It's because you're getting pushed down. You're not dropping down.
Exactly.
Or pulled down in this case.
This was the last French World's Fair to make a profit, but it was only the 6th of their 10 major World's Fairs.
Okay.
They had 4 more to go. Even though the rulers of different companies and their countries and their governments boycotted, still private companies and entrepreneurs from those countries would come and set up booths. So they really weren't hurting for displays from England or any place like that.
Well, business is still business.
Business is still business. This exhibition took place on 2 sites. There were the parade grounds from before, all the way past the Trocadero. We talked about all that before.
It was the military parade ground.
Right. And then they added another spot. They had a parade grounds, and then past the Trocadero, and then the smaller, these Invalides, which had a very pretty bridge that was one of the very first works of art of the Art Nouveau movement.
Oh.
And over there they had, all the French colonies had pavilions. On the other side was the French colonies. They had outdoor restaurants and cafes, and they all served like Indo-Chinese and Northern Africa and other colonies. They called it a celebration of diversity.
Even though they were all French colonies, or places that had been colonized by the French.
To show that French people came in all colors.
Oh, okay. I suppose that's nice.
And then they had the mud huts again for the Senegalese.
Human zoo.
The human zoos.
Yikes.
One of the Senegalese visitors who was camping there at the Senegalese mud huts complained because he said they have electricity, railroads, buildings, etc. It's really insulting that they have us living in these mud huts.
Right.
We even have a railroad.
It's like they weren't giving an accurate representation of how life was in Senegal.
Right. But to the people who were running it, they thought it was educational. But it was very exploitative. It was like human zoos.
Yeah. Just like it was in the previous ones we had. So it wasn't so good.
This fair had 22 entrances, and the times, admission times were different. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay, a set schedule.
Right, like everybody else. But they also had 8 a.m. till 11 p.m. for lit buildings because they were really using electricity a lot at this point.
Oh, okay.
The Eiffel Tower was the tallest structure in the world at that time. Gustave Eiffel designed an iron frame for the Statue of Liberty, so he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he understood his architecture and his safety to hold all of that metal up.
And he also built prefabricated houses and a lot of other things out of iron.
Excellent.
There were restaurants and viewing platforms. It took 2 years to build, and there were no elevators at first. Like I said, you had to climb the stairs. During the exposition, 1.9 million people climbed up the tower.
And there were restaurants, so plural restaurants?
Plural restaurants.
In the tower?
Yes. No, one of them was a patisserie, but I don't know what the other one was. But they've changed now. But there's still a restaurant there, at least one restaurant there that I know of. The tower was used as a weather station after the exposition, and then a radio transmitter was added to the third floor in 1904. In 1909, Paris decided that they didn't want to dismantle it after 20 years after all, and they were going to keep it.
Oh, thank goodness.
Gustave Eiffel had built it on a section of French-owned property, not park property, which is different legally.
So it belonged to the government.
So it belonged to the government, so there wouldn't be any legal problems with keeping it.
Oh, excellent. They wouldn't have to pay a family or an owner of some property.
Right, or the people who owned the park, because the people of France owned the park. It was nicknamed the Dame de Fer, or the Iron Lady. It was criticized for being ugly when they were building it and planning it. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's definitely one of the icons and considered one of the modern marvels of the world.
It is actually the most visited monument with an entrance fee in the world. It became a UNESCO Heritage Site in 1991. That's pretty late, actually.
Yeah, when you stop and think about it, it was more than a century before it was recognized.
About 7 million people have ascended per year, but now they have the elevators to do it, the lifts.
When did General Zod get to the Eiffel Tower? After there was, a nuclear bomb that Lex Luthor had planted in there or something?
I think so. I can't remember.
I think it was in the late 70s. Ago.
It's 1,083 feet tall. It's the same height as an 81-story building.
Oh, wow.
So, you think of it, it's that 3 floors. It's about so high. No.
Yeah, each floor is 300 feet.
It's much, much bigger than you think until you see it. It was the tallest building in the world for 41 years until the Chrysler Building was built. But in 1957, they put a broadcasting aerial added to the very top, so now it's taller than the Chrysler Building by 17 feet. It is the second tallest standing structure in France. A viaduct is the first. They have restaurants on the first and second levels, as I mentioned. The observation deck is on the third, but Gustave Eiffel also had a private apartment on the third level, and that is where Thomas Edison famously visited him and gave him a phonograph record,
nice.
recorder, the machine, and the discs, and wrote him a note saying God is the greatest inventor, but you are right up there.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Really. One of the protesters against the tower, Guy Maupassant, ate lunch at the tower's restaurants every day until he died, because it was the one place in Paris he couldn't see the tower.
What a typical French thing to do. How dramatic.
Very French.
I'm surprised he didn't eat in the sewers with his friend the Phantom just so he wouldn't have to look at the tower.
At night, during the exposition, the tower was lit with gas lamps, and 2 searchlights lit up, gas searchlights, lit up at the very top and shone down on various buildings of the exposition. And every day, at the opening and closing of the exposition, they would fire a cannon from the very top of the Eiffel Tower.
Make sure everybody in Paris was awake.
To know that it was starting. No cannonballs, just gunpowder.
Of course. Like that crazy guy in Mary Poppins.
Right, Admiral Boom. On the second level, a newspaper called Le Figaro had an office and a printing press, and they called their newspaper Le Figaro de la Tour, Figaro of the Tower. And it was a special edition just for the fair. They also had a patisserie, like I mentioned earlier, and at the top on the observatory floor was a post office, and graffiti was encouraged.
What?
They'd put up clean sheets of paper every day on the walls or against the walls and have people write down what they thought about the tower.
So everybody from around the world was actually writing their messages.
And then they'd take those every night and they'd give them to Gustav Eiffel.
Oh, how nice.
And he thought they were very curious.
I can imagine somebody bringing giant sheets of graffiti to you every day.
Every day. Oh, you'd love it. Famous people who visited included Buffalo Bill Cody. Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show was going on there at the exposition.
Oh, wow.
It was part of it. They had it for a while at Disneyland Paris, and it was a big hit. But it stopped a few years ago, unfortunately, because I wanted to see it.
This was the actual Buffalo Bill.
It was the actual Buffalo Bill and the actual Annie Oakley.
The era of the cowboy was ending and the modern world was beginning.
Exactly. At the 1900 Exposition Universelle, lifts were added. More lifts, new lifts were added. Similar to the Otis lifts, like I mentioned. In 1910, Father Theodore Walt measured the radiant energy at the top and bottom of the tower, noticed the difference, and discovered cosmic rays.
Oh, wow.
That's how they did it.
I wonder what...
It proved the existence of cosmic rays.
Oh, fascinating.
I was a priest. I was also a priest who discovered the Big Bang. Busy priest. They used the tower to jam radio waves from the Germans in World War I, and in World War II, French people cut the cables to the lifts, so the Germans had to climb the stairs to get up there. They put up a big German flag, and the wind immediately blew it away. So they put up a smaller German flag, and during the night, some Frenchmen climbed up the tower, and replaced it with tricolor, the bleu, blanc, rouge, the flag of France.
Right.
This happened twice.
Good on them.
Yeah.
Vive la Resistance.
They fixed them in 1946 after the war. Hitler ordered the tower demolished along with the rest of the city. Have you ever seen the movie Is Paris Burning?
No.
Hitler ordered Paris to be utterly destroyed.
Wow.
To be burnt to the ground, and the Eiffel Tower destroyed, and his man over there, the city was too beautiful, he just couldn't do it.
No, I can imagine.
He disobeyed.
No, it was too nice to do that.
Yeah. Across from the Eiffel Tower was the Gallery of Machines. It cost 7 times as much as the tower to build.
Oh, wow.
It was originally built for the 1878 Exposition, but it was used again in that year and in 1900 and was destroyed in 1910.
Well, why? What made it so expensive?
It was just huge.
Oh, it was just the scale of it.
Just the scale of it.
Oh, okay.
It was as big as say, the Crystal Palace and maybe bigger, but also you had the rest of the fair.
Right.
Now, all around it. They had a science and technology building where they showed off the new Otis elevator, the phonograph, the telephone, more electricity. They had, the most popular part of it was the Palais de Guerre, guerre meaning war. And they had military technology, naval artillery, all the things that people used to kill each other. And Krupp's was a German company, had some amazing things there that they later turned on us.
Oh, no.
During World War I.
Us? We weren't in World War I.
Yes, we were.
Well, it was more to do with Europe. Some of our doughboys were there, maybe.
No, we were all in.
In World War I?
In World War I.
Huh. In the trenches? We were in the trenches?
We were in the trenches.
For Verdun? Garroting the Krauts?
All of that.
Okay.
This is also where Eiffel showed off his prefabricated housing, where you just bought the sheets of iron and put them up and bang, zoom, house.
He was ahead of his time.
He really was.
Did he sell the technology to the Sears Company?
I was just wondering that. Another building was the Palace of Fine Arts and Liberal Arts. There was actually 2 buildings. With a mirror pond in between them, and they looked enough alike that they were called sisters.
So one side was technology, one side was arts?
One was fine arts, paintings and sculpture and all that. The other was liberal arts.
Oh, okay. So the people that never got a job after they graduated from college.
Exactly. Actually, Michael Eisner graduated with a degree in liberal arts.
That explains everything. Please continue.
They had a lot of fountains and reflecting pools. And they had, for the first time... No, not for the first time. Was this the first time? Streets of Cairo?
No, that's going to come in on your favorite part.
Okay. They had something called the Streets of Cairo, which traveled to several World's Fairs and then to Coney Island. It has a winding street with buildings at odd angles, a minaret, 2 mosques, a working school, and 2 huge ornamental gateways. All of the doors, windows, and architectural fittings were genuine from demolished buildings in Cairo. There were real Egyptians there in costumes, musicians, belly dancers, but no Little Egypt until later.
Right.
Artists, craftsmen, and vendors of both food and souvenirs, all sorts of tasty and exotic Egyptian food.
So it was like they had built their own Diagon Alley, but out of actual pieces of Cairo.
That's a really good way to think about it, yes. Yes, exactly. They also had village recreations from Java, Senegal, houses from Benin. They had the Finnish Laplands, Central Africa, and other countries. There was a transatlantic steamship pavilion, which is the only way to get to Europe at that point and back for Americans. They had gas and oil pavilions, food products. One of the food products that they had was a barrel that could hold 200,000 bottles of champagne.
Oh my gosh.
That was a lot of champagne, and it all got drunk.
That's not a barrel as much as it's an entire distillery.
I've seen pictures of the barrel. It's huge.
Ooh-wee.
And a little tiny person next to it. Tiny, tiny, little tiny person.
And it's probably in the Guinness Book, I'm sure.
Probably. We're seeing more theming here, too. Not just the streets of Cairo, but the international pavilions. Mm-hmm. Fully themed. Very much like what you find at World Showcase with shops and restaurants and people from there in native costumes.
That can speak their language plus the language of the visiting guests.
These were very authentic. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, they had something called the History of Habitation. And this is one Frenchman.
Okay.
And I can't remember his name. But houses from different eras and cultures, starting out with prehistoric, they had Aztec, they had Egyptian, and onward. But this is just from the view of someone who's never left France.
Oh, gosh.
So we would find them hilarious.
Right.
And very cringy. But back then they were taken very seriously. This is a great scientific exhibit, and it's good that we get to look at it.
Even though the guy never left France, and he's saying, well, people from pre-Columbian were all covered in feathers and skins, and people from Egypt all wore wigs, and prayed to dog-headed cow guys, and oh gosh, you don't really know.
No. And that's probably pretty close, Noah. When I mentioned how big the Palais was, here's how big it was. In one small side of it, Barnum and Bailey set up their circus and performed every day.
Yeah, if anything's going to cost 7 times more than the Eiffel Tower, I figure it's going to be a pretty big building.
They had a 2-foot gauge miniature railroad, kind of like Waltz in the Park, or when you see it in Griffith Park. Right. They had one of those that had an almost 3-mile track that took you around the grounds.
Inside or outside?
Inside.
Wowie.
There were so many firsts at this exposition. How could anyone top this? I hear some wind in the future, the Windy City, that is. On this episode, we learned about early expositions and exhibitions, World's Fairs, how many of the things led from these fairs led to developments that became parts of theme parks. Next time, we'll take a look at some later expositions and how they influenced theme parks. The White City is our next stop on Pink Monorail Podcast. Thank you for listening. Do you ever wish while you were driving in your car that you could be at Disneyland instead? I have a great way for you to visit Disneyland without having to pay a ticket price. Go to Windows to the Magic Podcast. They record live every episode at Disneyland. Join Paul Berry at Window to the Magic Podcast.
A special shout out to our sponsor, Circa 1955. Nicole is the founder of Luxillume, a small company that makes candles, wax melts, and room sprays. She creates scents that capture the season, nature, or wonderful memories. She also takes commissions for larger orders, such as weddings or company gifts. It turns out that Nicole is also a huge Disney fan and has a line called Circa 1955. She creates scents inspired by all things Disney. This includes the parks, attractions, treats, and films. She creates each formula and batch of candles herself. For every 1 scent she's released, she has probably made over 200 trials just to get the smell right. Don't take my word for it. Go to circa1955.com, order a candle, and use promo code PINK15. That's PINK15 to get 15% off your purchase. Support a small company that also gives back to the community. You're going to love it. Another shout out to Jim Hill for hosting Pink Monorail on his podcast network. The Jim Hill Podcast Network also includes Looking at Lucasfilm, The Disney Dish, I Want That, and Fine Tuning. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review for each podcast. Have a great day.